Welcome to another Rebuilding the Black Family. Thank you for joining us. Rebuilding the Black Family is about building strong, productive, successful, and self-sufficient Black families and communities. And so we're thrilled that you're joining us and we can really be with you today. Now, one of the things I want us to begin with is this. There's been a erroneous foundation that is often built or is underneath much of our thinking. And the fact, all of you know, we cannot build on a faulty foundation. For example, there are certain lies that black people have held, which has negatively impacted our minds, our psyche, our thinking. For example, there is the belief that when Noah came off the boat, there were three races of man, and that the most inferior race was the black race. And then there's another one of those lies is that Africa is a dark continent. And the meaning is that it is uncivilized. It is paganistic. It is ignorant. It is an ugly people. And then another lie is the belief that the first man was created white. And of course, all the biblical characters in the Bible we are led to believe or was told were all white. Now, there are consequences to lies. We've got to get this. There are consequences to lies. And if the foundation of our families, of our communities is built on a lie, then we shouldn't be surprised when we see all the casualties. And so then we get identity issues for believing wrong things. That even when our, let's say, one's personal self-esteem is high, our group or ethnic esteem can be very low because we think negatively of being black. And so those are the big issues. And in this program, throughout the weeks, the episodes to come, David and I, we're going to address these things. You want to pay attention because this podcast is designed to be informative. It is to challenge your thinking about yourself. And so we're gonna really help you to build a new foundation, if you will, of seeing yourself and believing about yourself in a right way. So, David, take it away in building on what we're going to discuss today.
You know, Brother Carl, thank you for that beautiful and quite powerful introduction, because not only does it introduce the viewers and the listeners to our subsequent episodes where we'll be speaking about a variety of, things, including the lies that have been perpetuated about black people, but it also is a beautiful introduction into today's episode where we'll be speaking about fighting self-hatred. Yeah, that's good. Oh, yes, we're going there today. Fighting self-hatred. And I want to also expand upon our understanding as black people of the notion of self. I'm not talking specifically or solely an individualized understanding of self. No. As Brother Carl talked about, I also want to talk about this extended self. When we talk about group esteem and understanding the connection that we have with one another as black people, oh yes, you may have this very superficial or shallow self-esteem, but how is it really self-esteem if you look down upon those that resemble exactly who you are, right? This is what we're going to be speaking about today, so please like, share, subscribe to anybody who you think would really benefit from listening to this episode and, of course, this podcast moving forward. But fighting self-hatred, Brother Carl. Before we start, I really want to, if you don't mind, if all of you guys don't mind, I want to share an article. It's it was done by it was done in Toronto Life. It was shared in Toronto Life in 2020. So recent. Yeah, so recent. And as I call 2020, the year of clear vision. It's a play on words, as well as play on concepts. For those who don't understand the joke, 2020 is when you have clear vision, and I would say 2020 was the year of clear vision because unfortunately it was when Brother George Floyd was murdered brazenly by the cop Derek Chauvin. in 2020 was also the year that we saw really a lot of the atrocities related to the pandemic, and just all the lives that it took. But also we saw the atrocities as it pertains to how Black people were treated. For instance, in China, in Wuhan, China, the African students, for instance. And we just saw the true colors as it pertains to how people really feel about Black people, right? So I call 2020 the year of clear vision, but this article was done as part of this post George Floyd, I guess one could call it, era, right? And so the article was done by Toronto Live, and the interviewee was a good friend of mine, actually mentor. She actually was my internship supervisor when I was doing mine in at CAMH in a Black youth program called the Substance Abuse Program for African, Caribbean, and Canadian Youth, aka SAPACY. Her name is Donna Alexander. Big up, Donna. I wanted to read some words that she had said in the interview because I think it's a nice segue into what we're going to be speaking about today as it pertains to fighting self-hatred. So, and these are the words of Donna. Now, they may be verbatim what she said in YouTube, or maybe they're paraphrased, but nonetheless, these are the words that were shared in the article on Toronto Live. You can find it Toronto Live. The title is, "It's Not Like We Can Take Off Our Black Skin and Operate This World Without It," right? That's what the article is called in Toronto Live. So I'm going to share with you what was said. And she's worked with Black youth for over a decade. I would say even close to 2 decades. Amazing, intelligent woman. So she said, since 2005, I've had the privilege of working mostly with Black youth, ages 13 to 24, who are dealing with mental illness and addiction issues. That's the primary focus, but they're also dealing with a sense of self-devaluation or a sense of devaluation, low self-esteem, the feeling that their lives are not worth as much as everybody else's. I have Black youth out there saying, listen to this, I don't even want to be Black. We're going to continue. It's because they don't see themselves reflected anywhere in politics, in their school administrations, in leadership roles in the professional world. They internalize that. And they feel there's no psychological safe space for them. They deal with carding when police roll up on them and ask, where are you going? What's in your pockets? Where do you live? Do you have any charges? And you're just a kid going about your day. Brother Carl, when you hear those words, when we talk about self-hatred, when we talk about this struggle of, as an extension of our first episode, people struggling, and let's call it what it is, I struggle to see the beauty of being Black. What does that say to you? What do you think?
Well, maybe what I thought initially was, here's a young man. This is his experience. This is his life. That's it almost takes me back into his world.
Yeah. I don't even know if it was a boy or girl.
No,
but nonetheless, yeah.
But thinking about, but I was thinking also, I thought of postal code when you said that. Because carding doesn't occur in every postal code.
Let's keep it a buck now. Come
right?
on now. Talk
and
that
so,
truth.
So what I'm saying is, can you imagine, here's a young man, he's speaking, this is his daily experience. That's what I hear from that. And I'm thinking, obviously all of us should be thinking, it's not right, it's not fair. Now, I'll tell you what, maybe part of my motivation and agenda behind this is that I'm shocked and extremely disappointed that this is the 21st century.
Yep.
Right? This is the 21st century.
2022.
We're talking about, we brag about being intelligent, enlightened.
Who's we?
I'm talking our general,
Very good, very good.
population at large.
Yeah.
Okay, so, a general population at large. So the disappointment, and maybe in some cases, the shock and alarm is that here's a young man's experience. This is not a story.
Yep.
This is a life.
Yep.
This is what he wakes up to, and through his eyes and body and experience. This is what he experiences every day.
Yep.
Can you imagine that? Just think about that. And then maybe furthermore compounded is in a time we live in. This is the 21st century. Is it not? This is the 21st century.
2022.
Right? This is not 1800s.
No.
Right? This is the 21st century. And in our braggadocious mentality of being so intelligent.
And who's our?
Our meaning society at large.
And which society?
Our
we talking?
world. Well, I'm talking North American society.
We need
at
to
large.
specify,
okay?
because who
Well,
is?
yeah, that's-
you know what I'm
you're
saying?
fair. You're fair.
Right?
Fair. So North American society at large, and what I do sometimes, I will listen to not just talk radio that I agree with.
Yes.
I listen to far right, far left, just to hear.
We both.
And when I hear this, you would think listening to sometimes certain people, certain groups, this is not happening. This is not true.
Based off of what the
Yes.
other
Yeah,
far
exactly.
right, far left.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
white people
based
are saying.
on
Yeah.
based on what they project,
Yes.
based on their talking points,
Based
their
off-
rhetoric.
Based off of how they deluded themselves.
Exactly.
Okay.
So to me, can you imagine? Here's a young man,
Yes.
and in some cases, devoid of dream, devoid of hope, devoid of a future. So, if you ask me what in talking about this should make us angry.
Yes.
So that's an emotion that's
Very
stirred
good.
up in me.
Yes.
To say no, this is why, because if we have any kind of decency, we should be thinking, well, this isn't right.
Yes.
And we better do something about it to change it.
Yes.
So we should be saying, what should we do to change it?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No,
and
no,
then
it does, it
if we
does.
go down to this self-hate, can you imagine? Listen to what one of the statements, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
He said,
I'll read it again
I
for
wake
you.
up and sometimes I wish I wasn't in a black body.
He said, she said, I have black youth out there saying, I don't even want to be black.
Look at that. So you know what that also tells me, David?
What does it tell you?
One of the things we've got to do aggressively and intentionally
Yes.
is equip our young black men and women to live in their black skin.
To love being black.
Yes.
Notwithstanding all the lies, as
Exactly.
you alluded to.
And all the challenges.
all the challenges, exactly.
But when you realize, you know what? When I know who I really am, notwithstanding the challenges, there's still the challenges.
Of course.
There's still the racism, the prejudice,
Yes.
all this kind of stuff that's
Yes.
going to try to come against you.
Yes.
But I really believe one of the things that equips you to face it
Yes.
is that sense of self. That strong, well, to me, not just self-esteem, but group esteem.
And the two need to be one.
Yes, because you can think about it. Psychologists have told us that many black people have high self-esteem personally,
Yes.
but low on the group
Yes.
esteem.
Yes.
So that's why you have black people are oftentimes fighting one another, disagreeing with one another. Why?
Yes.
I like myself, but I really don't like what I am, who I am,
Well,
what I'm in.
Well, then this is where I beg the question: do they actually love themselves?
Well, no, not really.
Well, thank you. And I guess this is the irony with even that point about black people having high quote unquote self-esteem, but very low group esteem, so they can direct their frustration or their anger, or their contempt towards other black people because they have an issue with other black people. But how on earth can you say you have an issue with other black people and not have an issue even unconsciously
Yes.
with yourself?
Yes.
And if we take different worldviews, maybe, just maybe, according to maybe the Eurocentric worldview, which prides itself oftentimes, especially the Euro-American or Euro-Canadian worldview that prides itself in individualism, then possibly you can do that because you see yourself as independent of other groups' influence. You see yourself as outside of that group. You see yourself as you. You're doing you. However, if you add in our Afrocentric view, which understands the self, as I alluded to earlier, as the extension also of the greater community, that what you do should have a positive impact on on others around you. So this notion of interdependence rather than independence,
Yes, very good.
then your self-esteem should almost always be linked to how others function. So, but this is the challenge with understanding self-esteem versus group esteem when it comes to black people, is because we, I think, want to delude ourselves to believe that we feel good about ourselves, but we just can't stand other black people. We think you can do both.
Yeah.
But for me, it
It's a
just based off-
contradiction.
it's a contradiction, and this is based off of my experience. Now, some people can, of course, argue against it. Cool, so long as you have, I guess you could say, valid,
Yeah, the data is behind it.
not only valid data, but also experience. Because a lot of people are speaking on what they have seen from the outside looking in. I'm speaking about what I've done in the work as a therapist. Right, one of the big things we talk about is self-esteem, and in my experience, it's very difficult to for one of my black clients, for instance, to argue that outside of black people, they feel real good, that they love themselves, that there's no issue, but they just have an issue with how black people are. It's very difficult for me to fathom that they truly actually do love themselves when they can't stand the people around them. Because for me, it's like, how can you do both? How can you not have a negative perception of other black people and therefore a negative perception of your mother, of your father, of your aunties, your uncles?
Well, they look like you, right? Mm-hmm. So for you to say, well, I like myself, but I don't like you, it is a contradiction because
a contradiction,
the person,
exactly.
we're talking about the black family, black people now,
Yes.
they're in the same body as you.
Yes.
But let's personalize it.
Yes.
Let me personalize it.
Very good.
Because I think we have to really, and many of you, you know what we're talking about. And so part of what our objective is for you to be faced and confronted with truth yourself.
Very good.
And really address maybe your own challenges and insecurities. You know what? I thought about this a number of years ago.
Go ahead.
My parents-in-laws live in New York. And a lot of time we're so conditioned by black negative images.
Very good.
Far beyond. I heard a gentleman say this. He lived in Africa, one of the African countries, I think it was Ghana. And he said, when I watched television, American television, about what I would see about black people was always negative.
Very
Now,
good.
that's what he said when he was back home
Wow.
in Africa.
Wow.
He moved to America, turns on his television, and he says, David, the only images I saw of people in my country back home, I think it was Kenya,
Was negative.
was negative.
Very good.
Now you understand, so the images, now it's not just negative images placed on people who are not black, but you understand
for everybody.
on our minds.
It's everybody.
So we're thinking, if all the images are is black people committing crimes,
Yeah.
being delinquent,
Yeah.
not being faithful to their wives.
Are poor,
Poor.
have
There you
flies
go.
running around our face,
Yep.
flying around our face, have food insecurity throughout the villages, are just rampant with HIV, I would be so bold to say man-made disease.
Always begging.
Always begging, right?
Yeah.
If these are the images,
Then that's your expectation. So now that forms the group thinking.
yes.
That's how. So now, that's who we are. That's,
Yes.
Right? And so.
And
this-
who's going to want to embrace that?
Exactly.
Who's going to want to
Exactly.
Who's going to want to adopt that identity if that's what it's associated with?
But then.
Right?
So then, part of that high self-esteem is this. It's not so much. It's more aspirational.
Okay. Talk
But
to me.
I think I have high aspiration for myself. This is what I want to be.
Yeah.
So in a sense, without realizing you can't do it, it's sort of like trying to separate myself from my blackness.
So you alienate yourself.
That's in a sense what we're doing.
That's it. Let's call
Right?
it what it is.
So now-
Alienation.
But with this thinking,
Yes.
and we got to go back to that story because it's a great story about this young person.
Yes.
Think about what they're thinking about themselves.
Very good.
And we could say, so there are seeds of destruction
Yes.
at a young age
Yes.
already planted in this young person.
Yes.
Think about that.
Yep. I'm black youth. Right?
Black youth.
Youth. So
So now-
youth is between 13 and 24 or even 25.
Yeah.
You're still a young child. You barely know what is right and what is wrong per se on a very profound level because your prefrontal cortex does not fully develop until you're 25. So I just want to put that out
Yeah,
there
yeah.
that we're talking youth
Yeah.
who are brutalized and harassed by police officers, grown men oftentimes and sometimes women. Just want to put that out there in terms of the context. Continue.
But now I was going to say this then, and interrupt me anytime.
Yes.
Keep us on course. So this self-hate, because that's part of what we're talking
That's
about.
what we're talking
this
about.
Self-hate.
Fighting self-hatred.
But when I realized, because I think we got out of that. I know you have.
Yes.
I'm in that more healthy place.
Yes.
of knowing who I am, being confident that God didn't make a mistake when He made me a black body to live
Yes.
in,
Very good.
right? But I realized in this journey, if you will, I started realizing how negative I was thinking about black people. I'm just being honest.
No,
with
no,
you.
no, no. We can talk about
I
it.
remember this. I was in New York. Went to visit, and I was in Brooklyn. Is near I think my wife's mom was ill in the
Yes.
hospital.
Very good.
I'm trying to remember the
Oh,
intersection.
not very good about that, but I'm saying
She was
very
in
good
Brooklyn,
about
New York, in the
That's
hospital. I forgot the name, but a big intersection, and it was. I mean, you talking? It's high rises and people everywhere, and it's a strong, high black population.
Okay.
Now the mentality is this: if I'm in a black neighborhood, guess what?
You got to lock your doors.
And it's dangerous.
It's dangerous.
And I could lose my life. Right? That's the thinking.
Yep.
I'm in this community, and I drove around, had to meet someone somewhere.
Yep.
But then I was walking a few blocks to where I had to get to.
Yeah.
And did you know, David? I thought about what I used to think.
Wow.
And I thought, this ain't dangerous.
Wow.
My life isn't threatened. It was almost like a revelation. Like,
Yeah.
a reality.
Yep.
And I thought, and this is what I tell people, you know what I've found? I've discovered in life, most people, regardless of color, background, they want the same thing.
Which is?
They want the same thing for them and their children. They want safety.
Very good.
They want health.
Yes.
They want success.
Yeah.
You understand? They want the necessities
They
of
want
life.
respect.
They want respect, value, dignity.
Yes.
And that was part of that journey for me, realizing, no, you've got to reject the self-hate. And you said it right. You cannot say you love yourself and you don't love other black people. You can't.
It's an absolute contradiction.
It's a contradiction.
Yes.
And we could say when we do that, we're disobeying the love command. Right? Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, your first neighbor is the person who just looks just like you.
Looks just like you.
Right? But we've got to get back to this area though, David. This young man of self-hate.
Yes.
So talk to us then about some of the answers to self-hate.
Very good. I'm happy. I'm happy you did. So the answer to self-hate, first off, comes with recognizing that you may experience self-hate, because sometimes some are looking for the answers, but what they're acknowledging is the fact that they struggle with self-hate. It's very difficult to give solutions to people who don't think that they hate themselves. They think, no, as you said, you have people who have deluded themselves to believe that, no, my self-esteem is high. Black people are the problem. They have alienated themselves so, I will say, successfully, that they honestly are looking at me like I'm the crazy one. There may be people viewing or watching this thinking these people are out of their minds. I don't need to look at my black neighbor, whether that's metaphorically speaking or literally, and love them or respect them. I just need to worry about myself. And these guys are living a fairy tale. This is what people may say. I know because I've heard it.
You've heard it, yeah.
So the first element is coming and having, even if it's an epiphany or some sort of revelation, and recognizing what are the symptoms that you may be experiencing self-hatred. So what are some of those symptoms, right? Before we even get to the solutions. And I'm just thinking about this off the top, right? Quickly. So some may be this so-called hypervigilance that some may feel around black people, but you don't seem to feel it around any other group. Although black people are not the only ones that commit crime, right? So if you feel the sense of hypervigilance or the sense of mistrust, if you almost hurl or feel sick when you look at yourself in the mirror and find ways to manipulate your skin or manipulate some form of a feature in order to not resemble being more African and trying to look more European, right? Things along those lines. If you find yourself struggling with anything positive to say, this is why we had the first episode. If you find yourself struggling to say anything positive about black people, you may be dealing with self-hatred, right? Now, it may not be active. It may not be conscious per se. Because I've had someone be like, no, like, I love black people, but they just can't find anything positive to say about black people. I'm like, well, you have to really question, do you actually love black people? And therefore, do you actually love yourself?
And also, we could say expectations. Suppose your
Yeah.
expectations of black people is low. Can I say that?
Very good.
Also,
Very
if
good.
you only, for example, you will only go to a white-led store, a
Yes.
white-led organization.
Oh, because black people are disorganized. Oh, black people
or they
don't know
don't do, they
customer
can't
service.
do something as good as
Yeah.
Their product is inferior.
And some of them will even suffer disrespect in a all-white restaurant or all-white organization or all-white business because for some reason that disrespect is more tolerable than the disorganization of certain black businesses.
But then the other, they are superior anyway, and they're better.
And this
So
is
they're deserving of my business.
so these are all elements of self-hatred, right? These are all elements of I would even say confusion. For me, I don't even look at people who function in that manner, if I'm going to be honest, as people who are present in reality. When we're looking at self-affirmations, right? Those self-affirmations, we're not saying that to be cliche, but self-affirmations are important. That's
very good.
Right?
That's good.
I read my son, a book right from the beginning. My son is 4. It's called I Am Black, I Am Unique, right? And literally, it's about repetition. We know kids, for instance, we learn from repetition. So it's to the point where my son's like memorized the book. I am black. I am unique. I have hair like lamb's wool. I have locks that look like is it like sheep ringlets or something like that. My skin is caramel. My skin is so relating your skin to things that are tasty, things that are nice to look at. Not saying my skin looks like poop, which is what unfortunately some racist children I've heard say to family members as children. This is what children have had. Our children, our babies at 6, 7 years old have had to experience. Oh, your skin looks like poo. Who wants skin that looks like poo? Versus if you say, well, your skin looks like vanilla, the real color of vanilla, which is black. Vanilla smells good. Your skin looks like chocolate. Skin looks like dark chocolate. Dark chocolate is the healthiest for you, right? This is what we start to teach our children. So those self-affirmations, those phrases that they can instill, repetition. So before you get there, I'm gonna let you get it because I know we have 1 minute. So starting with self-affirmations,
Good.
right? Whether it's vocalizing them, whether it's writing them down. Another thing is if it's really profound, see a therapist. Get some healing, right? Because there may be some blind spots that you may not even recognize. There may be some behavioral patterns. There may be even some thought patterns that are so ingrained in you that you don't realize how it's affecting your life. Maybe you need to see a therapist, a conscious therapist, right?
Wow.
I'll put it out there. Those are 2 methods that I think are important to start with. Go.
You know what? I thought of this. You were answering that youth question,
Yes.
that self-image.
Yes.
See, so I'm glad you ended with that. We're talking about, and I love David finished up with the affirmations.
Yes.
You've got to speak right about yourself.
Yes.
So what we've been talking about is seeing yourselves right so you can create or change that self-image of
Yes.
yourself on the inside. And David, before we go, I thought of, when you were just talking there, Jeremiah 1:5, God said this, I knew you before you were born. Think about that. So that means God
Powerful.
knew the body he made for you to live in.
Yes.
It's beautiful. Man, don't hate yourself.
No.
So, again, thank you for joining us again on another Rebuilding the Black Family podcast.
And one more thing
Go
before
ahead.
you go. I just want to say one more thing I also want to leave with listeners, and then
Yes, please.
we'll have the beautiful outro by Brother Carl, is as part of trying to remedy that self-hatred, listen to our podcast. Listen to uplifting podcasts, because self-affirmations don't solely have to come from you. Sometimes it's coming from others externally that resemble you, that you can relate with, that you can look at them and see yourself. Podcasts, YouTube videos, listen to music that uplifts you.
That's good, David.
Changing your point of reference where you no longer use other groups as point of reference that concurs with their frames of minds, but you are looking or intentional about trying to find what are frames of thinking, what are frames of behavior that correlate with my experience, and really seeking to do that. This is all about how you can try to remedy that self-hatred by beginning to understand who you are and who we are as Black people, and beginning to love all that we should represent, not what unfortunately we have been misled to represent. So I just wanted to add in that piece.
Excellent.
And Brother Carl, you can
Remember,
outro.
you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Beautiful in God's eyes and in your eyes and in our eyes. And so I want to, just as we wrap up, thank you for joining us again on another Rebuilding the Black Family. We'll see you next time.